Yeah, you're a little choppy.
All right. Okay. Cool. I know it must be the signal in that amazing locker room you guys have. Um, Good morning. We hope this finds you all very well. How was fall? We were following from afar. It looked like you guys had a really productive couple of weeks together as a team, and we are obviously absolutely delighted to be joining you this morning. Aside from myself, my name is Pat Colleluori, and I humbly serve the Headstrong Foundation as CMO, but I also was Nick's oldest brother. Nick Colleluori, the founder of the Headstrong Foundation, and an organization that Towson Lacrosse has, been woven into over the past couple of years through your relentless support and efforts. And, over the years, I've had the opportunity, and we've had the opportunity to befriend, your coaching staff, your SID, John Stark, and obviously many of you. So first and foremost, I want to also mention that our Lax Stache founder, Ken Clausen, is on the call as well.
Hey guys, hey Towson, thanks for joining us this morning.
Ken's joining us from Colorado. We're here in Philadelphia. You guys are in Maryland. So this is an incredible technology, an awesome platform, and we felt it was really important to speak with you all today. We were absolutely delighted to see Towson Lacrosse once again being part of the Headstrong Foundation, the Lacrosse Mustache Madness campaign, and just seeing, last year's amazing efforts and, the expectations for this year. As now that we're into November, we're looking at 26 members of the team who have signed up and are participating. And, you guys are at around $5,000 raised on your way to your goal of $25,000, which is incredible. And what we felt it was really important to do was to be able to connect with you all on a personal level, and to be able to, better communicate our mission, our impact, what the purpose of these mustaches are, what in fact Headstrong does on behalf of families affected by cancer. And, I assume that many of you, obviously having been active supporters of Headstrong in the past, whether it be through Lacrosse Mustache Madness or pledging a game in the fall or in the spring, and even, past involvement in the fall, that you are familiar with the cause, that you know that the Headstrong Foundation is synonymous with cancer in some way. You may have seen the lime green shoelaces out there. You may have heard the story of my brother Nicholas and his relentless battle against cancer. But over the past 10 years, what has emerged is an amazing organization that has become a national resource supporting cancer patients and their families all across the country in an effort to empower them to live with a greater quality of life during their battle with cancer, and helping to address the imperative need of meeting the financial challenges that these families encounter, and just the challenges that they face in an attempt for normalcy and a hopeful remission. How many of you, by show of hands, have been touched by cancer in some way? Immediately, you see almost the entire room go up. And one of the things that I think is incredibly important is that we acknowledge the prevalence of cancer in our world, and realize that, every one of us has a direct correlation and connection back to this cause. And, this is a disease that, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, would it have impacted my life? Up until that point, I would have said no. And then all of a sudden, everything that we had lived as a normal family took a hard left turn with my brother Nick's diagnosis. So just to kind of give you just a quick backstory on Headstrong and our journey. Back in 2005, my brother Nicholas was playing collegiate lacrosse at Hofstra University. He was a young man who essentially defied the odds, played outside of his physical limitations. He was a 5'10", 165-pound, gritty, blue-nosed collar kid for Ridley. All-state nose guard in football. He's a young man who pinned his wrestling coach in 8th grade. He was a guy who won 3 consecutive state championships in lacrosse, and anchored a defense his senior year. and went to an undefeated season. The irony in it all is that Nick was the type of individual that believed in the concept of team and put that on a pedestal. Much like many of you, you guys acknowledge that you're part of something bigger than yourselves. And that's a consistent theme throughout Nick's life. He was always about elevating everyone else around him. He was the difference maker. You could guarantee that there was a play during the course of the game that would change the momentum of the game that obviously, Nick was behind. And he was the type of guy that despite accolades, it was never about them. It was always about the team and doing what it was needed. And his senior year, in fact, he was actually a midfielder up until his senior year. So I know many of you have probably been asked at a certain point of coming on board at Towson to maybe step outside of your comfort zone, maybe play defensive midfielder. Maybe you were an attackman in high school and now you're playing midfield, those type of things. And, with that being said, this was exactly the role and the path that my brother encountered. Now, he played in the CAA, and I know you guys are obviously, a brutal competitor with Hofstra University. We had actually faced some incredible games against Towson when Nick was at Hofstra and my brother Michael was there. But, there was always this synergy that the dynamics that make up your program, in fact, almost emulate the same things that go on there. And the fact that, I think that's what makes you guys such wonderful rivals in certain respects, is that there's so much chemistry as far as what makes your teams, comparable. And so anyway, we always look forward to seeing that those games take place in the spring. But what's been amazing about Headstrong over the years is that we've had this opportunity to work amongst the landscape of college lacrosse programs. And, when Nick got to Hofstra, he recognized that, he was a young man that was always looking to, not just prove himself, but, be that difference maker on the team. I'm sure many of you could probably turn to a teammate who, certainly personifies those type of characteristics. Somebody that, always, is going to go the extra mile, put in that work. And, Nick was a kid who essentially walked on to Hofstra's team, and by the end of his freshman year was playing in every game, and, heading into his sophomore year had secured a starting role. He was certainly an impact player. So anyway, Nick was diagnosed with cancer 2 weeks into his sophomore year. So think about that right now. Look around. Think about what would happen in your scenario, in your situation, if, God forbid, someone your age, is exactly where you guys are at right now in your life, being told that, you get called into a coach's office after undergoing some testing, and you're met by parents and physicians and, and your coaching core. And essentially you're told that you have 3 months to live and that you have a terminal form of cancer. Now, Nicholas was diagnosed with mature non-Hodgkin's. It was actually diffused B-cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he was staged in the latter stages. And, at the time, there was a lot of research being done on the disease he had, but since his passing, there's been some incredible advancements that have been made. But the crazy part is that, Nick kind of looked at having cancer as an opportunity. He looked at it as a chance to once again defy the odds, like he had done most of his, life as an athlete. And, interestingly enough, the similarities between being a patient and being an athlete are almost unparalleled. Being somebody that's affected by cancer and being an athlete, what it's like to, ride the roller coaster of ups and downs and emotional victories and unfortunately defeats and setbacks and challenges and things like that. So I tell people all the time that being an athlete unknowingly, aided my brother in being a patient. And one thing that I think was consistent was that, just like being part of a team, our family realized that when Nick was diagnosed with cancer that we had to be a team. And Nick realized that his cancer was not just affecting himself, but there was a ripple effect that, was devastating loved ones, family, friends, teammates, etc. So like I said, his cancer was much bigger than himself. And, one thing that when Nick was diagnosed, you know, as opposed to just like breaking down. You know, Nick had this mental toughness and had the emotional poise and maturity to kind of handle it. And he said, okay, I get it. You know, he went down to the locker room, just like what you guys are sitting in right now. And he stood on a chair, just like the one in front of you now. And he talked to his teammates and he said, guys, I've just been given some devastating news. My parents are here and I've learned that, you know, I have cancer. I want no tears. We're going to fight this thing together. I'm going to be back in the spring. And, you know, the interesting thing was that was how he reacted to being told that he had 3 months to live. He refused to accept his diagnosis and realized that through the strength of the team that he was going to get through things. So anyway, Nick undergoes treatment, withdraws from school. He's undergoing intensive radiation and chemotherapy, a stem cell transplant, and all the while spending a considerable amount of time in the hospital, disconnected from his team. But the one consistent variable that really motivated Nick to get, you know, to stay focused and to stay poised and to kind of, you know, just deal, was the thought of one day having this opportunity to play lacrosse again and be back at school. And I think, you know, for any of you that, you know, maybe is sidelined because of an injury, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But think about the idea of, you know, you're faced with your own mortality at 19 years old. So anyway, as Nick would go into the hospital, he would spend a significant amount of time inpatient, and he would get to know patients and their families. And then at the same time, we started to experience hardships ourselves. You know, my mother and father served as caregivers to Nick, and they would take time off from work. Well, you know, fortunately, you know, we lived 15 minutes away from the University of Pennsylvania Medical Center where he was getting treated. And, you know, we started to meet families that were traveling a great distance for treatment. And so anyway, so Nick was the type of individual that had a larger than life personality. He resonated with a lot of people and just had a charisma about him that made people feel confident and comfortable. And as a result, nurses felt comfortable, doctors felt comfortable, other patients on the floors felt comfortable. And Nick realized that through team athletics and sports and just, you know, being an NCAA student athlete, that he had a platform. And from the moment of his diagnosis, he was interested in sharing his experience so that others would benefit from the life that he was living. And he wanted to ensure that people weren't defined by their cancer diagnosis. And he also wanted to expose the reality that was cancer and also the hardships, and realize that, like, wow, I could use my platform as a vehicle to truly make an impact. So upon spending 45 days in a hospital undergoing a stem cell transplant, he began to create this organization built on the idea of helping families navigate their cancer journey with a greater quality of life, dignity, clarity, and more importantly, normalcy. If there was one thing that Nick wanted more than anything, it was this desire to feel normal again. And that is a consistent thing that we have seen over the past decade of serving Headstrong's mission. And guys, I wish I could say that our story had a happy ending and that Nick survived cancer. But the reality is that no matter what they hit him with, unfortunately, he didn't respond. And during his life, you know, he certainly encountered humility, being a 205-pound solid athlete at the Division I level. And within 14 months, he was confined to a wheelchair at 120 pounds. I mean, just that physical change alone could be mentally defeating. One day I came home from work and I found Nick staring at himself in the mirror. It was one of the most heartbreaking things for me as a brother to see him struggling to stand up out of a wheelchair and staring at himself and just looking at himself as a shell of what he once was. And I gave him a hug and I said, you know, Nick, I don't see cancer, you know. And it's crazy because I can honestly tell you as a brother, when you love somebody unconditionally that's struggling with cancer, you just don't see the pain that they're going through. And I'll be honest, my brother, you know, was more concerned about our family than himself. And I think that is the ultimate testament to unconditional love and what family truly means. He was more concerned about how his cancer was affecting everyone around him, including his teammates. And so Nick stayed very active with his team throughout his battle. And the beautiful thing is that when Nick struggled, the team picked him up and vice versa. So anyway, you know, my brother Nick passed away at the age of 21 years old, and he would have been a junior at Hofstra. You know, and so, you know, what's amazing was that in the 45-day period that he spent inpatient while going through the stem cell transplant, he created this Headstrong Foundation. The Headstrong Foundation, as I had mentioned, you know, is an organization that has really been carved based on the services that Nick saw needed. You know, he experienced great hardship as a young adult trying to manage the financial bout of cancer. You know, he realized that there was families all around him that didn't have a support system. He saw families that were traveling great distances for pursuing clinical trials and comprehensive cancer care. Those were the challenges, you know, seeing the different family dynamics and how they influence the affordability and the accessibility of care. So anyway, in the last days of my brother's life, we made a promise to Nick that we would see his vision of Headstrong into fruition. And when Nicholas passed away, it became our family's mission to make a difference and see Nick's vision into fruition. And for the past 10 years, we've worked relentlessly to serve as a direct support system for families across the country. And the focus is really to help them be the light in their darkest days, provide direct financial assistance, mentorship, improve inpatient accommodations at hospitals, and most importantly, provide complimentary lodging for cancer patients and families through Nick's House. So I just want to share a story with you all real quick. When my brother Nick was inpatient back at that 45-day stay, we had encountered a family while standing in line to pay for parking, $21 a day, $210 a week just to park your car at the medical center. And we had learned that they were living out of their car, that they had traveled more than 1,000 miles so that their daughter could undergo a life-saving bone marrow transplant, but financial constraints prevented them from being able to rent a hotel. And they were required to stay in the greater Philadelphia area for 120 days. The reason why they were coming to Philadelphia was because of an experimental clinical trial that was also being conducted. What happens is that, you know, this family was taking shifts. They had left their jobs and employment. They had left their home. And more importantly, they were living out of a car. Could you guys imagine living out of a parking garage? Because that's essentially what this family was dealt. We ended up having an extra room at my mother and father's house, and my mom and dad welcomed this family into our home, and we gave them a place to call home. And it shed light on a major problem, and that was the lengths and sacrifices that families would go through in an attempt to save one's life. And so we started to realize that there were lots of families in this position, and that in fact there were more than 200 families a month seeking accommodations of this magnitude, but there was just nothing for them to stay. So anyway, back in 2011, we opened our first Nick's House, and it has welcomed families from all over the country. We've been at 100% occupancy. And what we have found with Nick's House, in addition to everything that we do, is that Nick's House affords folks the ability to pursue life-saving clinical trials without taking on the astronomical expenses. The average guest stay at Nick's House is 6 to 8 weeks. The savings per family is upwards of $15,000 based on the average hotel rates in the city of Philadelphia. And the average family that we see travels a distance of beyond 200 miles for treatment. Now, the reality is that right now we have a family, and I believe Coach and maybe John Stark shared with you the video of our current guest family. We have a family from Western Maryland, the Crow family, and they're currently with us. They traveled 5 hours for treatment. They have a 9-month-old little girl by the name of Holly, and Holly's fighting for her life, guys. She's 9 months old. She has a cancer of the central nervous system, and she's undergoing proton radiation here in Philadelphia at Children's Hospital. And what's happening is, just to put it into perspective, to make it a little bit more personal, her uncle graduated from Towson 2 years ago. So we're talking about a part of the Towson family that we are actively working with. Holly and the Crow family are one of hundreds of families that we're currently working with around the country that are being dealt this situation. And so anyway, so what's happening now is that, you know, it's critical that we're able to provide these supportive services for these families, because the more families that can pursue these treatments, the likelihood of them getting their lives back to normal and hopefully their children living a healthy life are going to be more prevalent and more probable. So anyway, with that being said, you know, I wanted to kind of dial you into Headstrong's impact. You know, guys, to date, we as a lacrosse community, we've allocated more than $10.5 million in direct financial assistance and support to aid families and programs all across the country, and many from the state of Maryland. And also, you know, we've assisted more than 14,000 families from around the country. And so anyway, you know, one of the many initiatives that we have during the course of the year is this Lacrosse Mustache Madness campaign. And the backstory on Mustache Madness, gentlemen, is actually, you'll notice that the campaign starts on October 19th and ends on November 28th, two very significant dates for Headstrong, in the fact that October 19th was my brother Nick's birthday, and November 28th was the, unfortunately, day he passed away. Now, I had mentioned to you guys about his significant weight loss and just the physical changes of, you know, losing your hair multiple times and just not feeling normal. Well, you know, one thing that concerned my brother was he was a regular guy. He was concerned about the fact that people saw cancer when they looked at him. Do you remember when I said to you that, like, when I saw my brother, I didn't see cancer? But for him, he felt that everyone just saw this patient, this cancer patient. He almost felt not human. And so, you know, with that being said, you know, he would always say to me, you know, I just wish that people would treat me normal and not like a test, like, or not like a case file, or, you know, maybe he was concerned about the way kids, Nick loved kids. He wanted to be a coach and a teacher. You know, he wanted people to feel comfortable talking to him, you know, even though he looked so ill. And so anyway, in the latter part of his life, he grew a mustache. And the mustache was a buffer. It was a buffer to protect him, but to also divert conversations away from how he was feeling and put it into a positive light. And it was like, guy, you know, you grew a mustache, Nick? Like, and he would be like, yeah, I grew this mustache out. It was like almost like a shift away from talking about the cancer that was eating him alive. So anyway, you know, we started this campaign. We're joined by Ken Clausen. I'm going to have him say a couple of words about the campaign, and then we'll take some questions.
Hey, fellas. Yeah, look, I appreciate you guys joining us this morning. And the campaign, you know, I started it with two friends of mine my senior year at Virginia. And the idea was to try and, you know, unite the lacrosse community, because we have such a special community, such a tight-knit community, and make an impact while having some fun, you know, and that was our mission. And so, you know, we've this is our 9th year running the campaign. We've had more and more teams join every year, and you guys have been such strong supporters of us, you know, for many years. And so from the bottom of our hearts, you know, thank you so much for everything you guys do. And I hope that, you know, with Pat's story there, it helps you realize that, you know, as much as this is fun, it's making a big difference. And the people that we're helping are real and tangible. They're staying at Nick's house. And like Pat said, Headstrong's mission more than anything is to improve the quality of life for these patients and to bring some of that normalcy back and to help them with the financial assistance. And so, you know, we've continued to grow the mustache, you know, and the campaign. And, you know, as you know, like, you know, similar with Nick's story, when people see, you know, more often than not, we don't tend to have mustaches. And when they see it, people ask what's going on. It's an easy transition. I'm growing this for the charity. I'm growing this for Headstrong. You know, and one of the significant, you know, one of the fun things, you know, the correlation between Nick and I was, you know, we're both from Southeastern PA. We both wore the number 27 while we played. We were both defensemen. We found out after the fact, you know, when Pat brought up idea of us starting the campaign on October 19th, you know, one of the really cool similarities was that also happens to be my birthday as well. And so for Nick and I to share those similarities has been really neat. And look, I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen some of the tweets. We just passed $100,000 yesterday. We raised $203,000 last year, and we're continuing to strive towards that goal this year. And so, you know, we wanted to take this call, and we appreciate you guys taking the time, but just to let you know, to bring it, to give you some insights on the impact of what you guys are doing, how meaningful it is, how appreciative we are, and to give you some insights on just what Headstrong is doing and why they're so great, you know, and why this is so important. So like I said, I appreciate you guys joining us and for all your fundraising efforts so far. And I appreciate all the time and everything you guys are doing. I know how busy you guys are and how difficult the schedule is. But we truly appreciate everything you guys are doing and want you guys to know that what you are doing is making a really big impact and a significant one. And we're so appreciative for all the support you guys are giving.
Yeah. The other thing, gentlemen, that I wanted to share with you is that this campaign will conclude with the opening of our second Nick's house. So as we speak right now, renovations are kind of winding down at a beautiful 8,000 square foot home, which will support the needs of 8 families at a time. It will provide 2,500 nights of complimentary housing. We call this the house that Lacrosse built. We're talking about an amazing resource to support families like the Crows from all over the country, to increase Headstrong's generosity by more than 300% through Nick's house and allow that many more families the opportunity. So if you guys could imagine, this campaign and your efforts are being met with the utmost impact. We're literally opening an amazing 4-story home devoted to welcoming families so that they can pursue the top-notch clinical trials and the most advanced treatment in hopes of finding a cure for them. You know, right now, you guys have 4,800 in. You got 26 members of your team registered. Your goal is $25,000. There's some incredible resources online to help you guys. I know I've been in close communication with John Stark, and I know Coach Nadlin has been incredibly supportive in the past. We'd love to see you guys not just hit 25,000, but we'd love to see you guys hit 27,000 for Nick, and that significance of that being his number. And I know you guys can do it. I really do. It's pretty simple. You just, like I said, if there's any questions that you guys have, you know, we hope that you guys can see that your mustaches and a little bit of social media can have a significant impact, especially as we make this push to Thanksgiving, the importance of family, the anniversary of Nick's passing, and the opening of this new Nick's house. Does anybody have any questions? I'd be more than happy to take them. And, you know, if not, we want to thank you for your time and wish you the best of luck throughout this campaign.
Matt, I got a question. So, Coach Nance, with the Crow family being up there, is there anything possibly, you know, kind of unique or some challenges you feel like they've been facing that maybe we could support them on, you know, through resources that we can, you know, send up that way, or
Sure.
feel like could be a, you know, an impact that we could provide specifically to them through our efforts, obviously with, you know, with Headstrong, continuing that process as well.
Yeah. So in meeting with them yesterday, I had spent some time with them, and, you know, the little one is, you know, she's sweet. I mean, she's 9 months old. But one thing that they actually shared with me yesterday was that they have an 8-year-old son and a 5-year-old son that they have not seen in about 2 months. Their grandparents are caring for the 2 boys while the mother and father, Mike and Leanne, are taking care of Holly here in Philadelphia. So, like, if there's something you guys could do, I would certainly say, you know, I think it would really mean the world to these 2 boys to possibly, you know, maybe send a helmet or a jersey, or just to let them know that Towson's got their back. Or, you know, I don't know if there's something specific that the boys are maybe looking for Christmas or something like that. I'd be more than happy to look into it. But Think about that for a moment. We're talking about like a family that's literally been divided because of these circumstances. And I just think that, you know, it's kind of difficult because these two boys haven't had their parents for a couple of months because, you know, they're caring for a sick sibling. And I think that that would probably have a considerable impact on them. And I think with them being like 8 and 5, I think that, you know, they would certainly, I think it would resonate, you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to take a percentage of the funds that you guys raise and have it directly support the Crows. So that I think that, you know, we can help to give them a great holiday and to maybe offset some of the expenses that they're incurring. Because Mike, their husband, hasn't worked since April.
Yeah, we'd be all in.
Okay.
On that.
Any other questions, Coach?
Hey, fellas, hey, the last thing I would just say is that, you know, don't overthink the fundraising. You know, I think that it can be a daunting task, especially when you're looking at big numbers. I think that you kind of wonder at times, how am I going to do this? What's going to happen? Who's going to donate? I think just starting with just taking a picture of what you're doing, putting it on social media, simply asking friends for some, you know, to you know, instead of 3 beers, donate $10. You know, like there's little things that you can start just doing to create a little buzz. You know, putting out the fact that, hey, $150 funds a night at Nick's house. I'm looking for 15 friends to donate $10. You know, and I think that once you start just putting it out on social media, once you start allowing people to see what you're doing and why you're doing, things will start rolling. So I think that don't overthink the fundraising. Don't make it seem like this, you know, daunting task of how am I going to do it and how am I going to get this money and what's going on. Putting it on social media, having the link for your fundraising page on your profile, showing people what you're doing, let them know why it makes a difference. Like, take baby steps of, hey, I'm looking for somebody to donate $15. Maybe I'm looking, and then once you start doing that, you're going to start seeing some things steamroll and start happening. But don't overthink it. Have fun with it. You know, that's what it's about. Put your picture up. Let people know why you're doing it. And you start just putting it out there, and you're going to start getting some momentum going.
I would also say, Coach, that I would say that, you know, one thing that I think is incredibly important is strength in numbers. That's how this campaign works. I mean, right now, guys, you know, aside from yourselves, you know, there's 73 other teams. You know, but you guys are really special to us, and I certainly thank Coach Nadlin. Look forward to seeing his mustache. Obviously, nobody has a better mustache in our game than John Stark, and you know, definitely want to thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts. Our family is so incredibly, and our organization is so incredibly grateful to have you as a partner in our fight. So have a great day, good practice, and good rest of the year.
Yeah, good luck this season, fellas. Thanks for all your support.
Thanks. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.